For this example, I'm playing as Babylon. A reason being, this example should net us a lot of industry, so I may not need to worry about my builder stars so much. I do need a few key technologies, and to really take advantage of the extra production, I'm going to want extra districts and buildings unlocked through the tech tree. So I'm playing as Babylon to build my science, and then use this trick to get my production online. And while the trick isn't making the most of these random events, if I can pick up random events along the way to give me extra food to grow my population, or even extra industry or units, because units are key for this strategy, I'm happy to pick them up as I go. Here is the situation at hand. I have my capital city, Babylon. It's got quite a few dudes in it who I've been absolutely pushing towards being scientists to unlock my technologies. However, now that that's out of the way, I think I'll focus on growth and then split everyone evenly among the rest. At the moment, this city of 2 territories is producing 24 industry a turn. Here you can see a breakdown from where it's coming from. The next task, of course, is for me to choose something to build. Now, in this case, I had a pretty slow start. This, by the way, is a normal paced game. Everything is normal. We'll take a look at actually how this example plays out in practice and why Humankind players could probably learn a thing or two from Civ 6 players in this case. If you've been watching Civilization 6 gameplay, you'll feel right at home in this video. Here you see Babylon, the city of 5 population, is going to take 6 turns to build its astronomy house. Why? Well, because we have 24 industry a turn, and the total cost of the astronomy house is 127 industry. Quick math. How can I speed this up? The most obvious way to speed up your early game production is to shift citizens onto industry. At the moment, these 3 populations are going to grow me in 2 turns. Don't isolate that audio. If I move them over though, you can see that each one's going to provide an additional 6 industry until my jobs are full. Now I'm at 36. It's only going to take me 4 turns. Great. That's a wonderful start to finishing this quicker, but we can do it even faster still. With our industry maxed out, we're at 36. This is where your units come in, and this is where Civilization 6 players will feel right at home chopping trees. Don't click away though. This is super powerful, and nobody is doing this. And I know this from my single player and also my multiplayer experiences. Take a look. You can select any unit you like. I'm doing it with a scout. I'm selecting the clear forest function. Clearing a valid forest tile within your borders will net you industry. Click it and you get this nice overlay, basically showing you where all of the forests or woodlands are. Because it's important to note in Humankind there are 2 different types, right? You can get this sort of scraggly, basic looking woodland. There's a couple of trees here, or the dense forest. Either way though, they'll net you the same amount of industry, generally speaking. They must be within your borders to net you industry as well. You'll note that these ones here are grayed out, because they're not in my borders. And while I can still chop the trees down, and there are other values and use cases to doing that, we'll talk about those toward the end of the video, you should note that you don't actually get any industry from it. See, in this case, it's going to take this 1 unit 4 turns to chop a forest, and the forest is going to net me 20 industry to Babylon. How does that compare to our statistics? Well, if we don't have people working industry, if we'd like to do science instead, it's 1 turn's worth. If we have everyone on it, it's half a turn. It might not seem like much, and there are other considerations to this as well. If you do this wrong, you'll screw yourself over. So bear with me as I take you through some of the finer details of this strategy. Okay, so we've flashed forward a few turns, and now I have an army of 4. Which you may have, you should probably have, if you're defending or attacking or really just playing any game of Humankind and not a moron like me who doesn't have a standing army. Watch what happens here. Now, all of a sudden, on normal game speed, I can clear these forests in 2 turns. So if you're using your units at the start of the game and keeping them together like this, you're doing it twice as fast. Now you're receiving a default turn's worth of industry from chopping a forest every 2 turns. You can see it starts to add up. Think about chopping forests out on the hinterland, in a territory you're not going to build on that's connected to a city, and you're farming free industry for that city. However, take a look here at what happens to the tile itself. When I chop the forest, bada bing, bada boom, its industry is removed. And while you can plant forests later in the game, and it may not be an issue, it's important to note. And this is a really good segue, actually, into the real nuts and bolts. This is the extra for experts section of this video. Here's the strategy, simply put, but how does it impact you? What are the real positives and negatives that have come out of it? Because there are lots of things that you might not have thought of. Let me run you through them now. The first advanced tip here is to focus on exponentially growing your infrastructure. Don't queue up in your city. Some crappy infrastructure like this, though. Don't queue up districts you don't need. Instead, focus on makers' quarters and the infrastructure that's going to provide you with more industry. And snowball it, right? Chop trees, gain industry, build more industry. You get where this is going. Use the trees to snowball your initial first few districts or infrastructures if you're struggling with stability. That will put you in a really good industrial place moving forward. The downside, and really the second thing that you should be reflecting on though, is if you remove the trees, you remove the industry, as I showed you before. Take care not to remove industry from areas where you're likely to be building more districts in future. For example, I might not want to chop this forest because I can see that there's a good spot here for some good industrial districts. However, I'm planning my industrial development out this way. I'm building a district here, and I'm going to queue up some more around these forests because I'm going to keep these ones knowing that they're good for industry and that they are providing some base industry to my city. There is another key part of the early game and moving through every era of humankind. It's these cultural wonders. In particular, the Pyramid of Giza catches my eye with a 25% discount on future districts industry. I can't think of a better thing to be surging early game chopped industry into than something like the Pyramid of Giza, which will benefit me forever, right? Chop a few forests now, benefit later greatly for the rest of the game. I really like to chop forests to get these early industrial buildings or units out quickly. Of course, if, like me, you're eyeing up some strange foreign borders on your horizons, you might want to invest in some units, but also keep one or two nearby on some forests or near them to quickly chop some trees down, to quickly build some industry and some units if you need to defend yourself. The other thing that I touched on a little earlier in the video is using the chop as an aggressive stance. To be honest, it's something I don't like to do very often, but it can be beneficial. Take an example here. You might not want your opponent to be able to hide in forests. Let's say I want to claim this territory for its wonderful silver, and I'm eyeing up a battle in this open area between my capital and theirs. I might want to, for example, send these units and chop a forest to clear it. Forest, of course, acts as cover in Humankind. It provides defensive bonuses to units. So if you can chop it down, particularly if you're chopping down the forests closer to their borders and keeping the ones closer to yours, you could potentially build some strategic examples out of an area where there was none before. Here, I've jumped into a absolute god start, by the way. Look at all this silk and freaking incense. Either way, I've jumped into a god start on a blitz speed to show you how it changes. Again, I've chosen Babylon. Again, we have roughly the same industry in the city, 26. And I've got an army of 3, not 4. Let me show you what it would do to chop this tree. You may remember with 4 units on normal speed, it took us 2 turns. Here, with 3 units, I can do it in 1. But what you might be more surprised to note is actually, if I remove a unit from this stack, I can still do it in 1 turn. In fact, it actually gets a little bit bonkers, because with 1 unit, I can do it in 1 turn. Oh boy. So now, on Blitz mode, you can go on a chopping frenzy. An absolute chopping frenzy for industry. Watch. As normally, of course, I wouldn't do this so close to the city. I would probably, say, attach this territory and start chopping these forests out here. Or look for woodland out this way, for example, where I'm very unlikely to be building if I were to settle the city around these resources here. But, for the sake of this example, let's play this out. This unit chops 1 turn, 20 industry. This unit chops 1 turn, 20 industry, and this one does the same. Now, with 3 units, I'm earning 60 industry a turn. Now, of course, this isn't sustainable forever unless you want to keep planting forests, but it is sustainable for at least one burst. So, I'm going to queue up 2 industrial districts and some infrastructure, and you know what? Maybe another industrial district afterwards, in a location that's not going to be overly good, but I'll queue it there as a case study. Here you can see I've got 4 turns worth of things queued up. If I shift that one around, yep, still 4 turns. Doesn't really matter. Let's end this turn with 3 people chopping trees and see just how much industry we can earn. Reminder, we are earning 26 a turn. Chop, chop, chop to chop. And even the Maker's Quarter that was going to take the 4th turn to be completed is now but half a turn or 1 forest chop away. In a nutshell though, what have I done in 1 turn on Blitz mode? I have surged my industry. I've built all of these industrial districts. I've paved the way for even more in future. Now, of course, you'll have to balance stability concerns a little bit here, as well as the concerns of keeping your city built and on par and on check and on plan. Boom! You can see we cleared through what could have been 6 turns worth. We cleared through about half of it, which is great. Of course, this could continue to scale, and when in Rome, you may as well continue to scale it. We'll try 1 more turn, and then we'll move through onto our next point. But I think this really goes to show just how powerful it can be to chop forests, and also while you're at it, disband some population for the extra jobs along the way. If I really went hardcore on industry here, while also trying to make sure that I don't starve too much, I could queue up all of these districts and chop these trees and come out with a wonderful, wonderful industrial base in literally 3 turns on Blitz mode. I mean, this is crazy. In a nutshell, to wrap up here, what have we learned? We've learned that much like Civilization 6, it's a good idea to chop trees in Humankind. Maybe even a better one still. You can use it to rush out units, wonders, industry, districts, you name it. It's particularly useful if you have forests to clear in neighbouring, connected or adjacent territories where you're not going to be taking advantage of the innate industry that forests and woodland provide. You can also use it strategically to clear forests that your opponent could be hiding in future, or of course to increase your movement speed. Forests do slow down your movement as you walk into them, most of all. Finally, it does of course lessen the yields, but you can replant trees in future to replant those forests to get those yields back. So it is, like most things in strategy games and in life, a trade-off between how you want to balance it out and what you want to do. In a nutshell, I would leave you with this word of advice. The faster the game speed you're playing on, the better this trick gets. Do chop down forests that you'll never use, particularly on the fringes of your empire. And in territories like this one here, that you might not be building a lot of districts on, but they do connect to your city, right? By connecting this territory up here, not only have I harvested a whole load of resources, but also there's a whole load of forests that I can start chopping down to surge industry in and build up an even stronger industrial base. Thank you very much for watching this Humankind video. These have been my tips and tricks. I'll see you in the next one.